Saddam Hussein, or a so-called peace campaigner whose activities, if listened to, would have by now led to the subsuming of Kosovo into a greater Serbia after a successful genocide, the continued rule of Afghanistan by the Taliban, and in Iraq whose best hope for the future would be the succession of Uday Hussein. This isn't conscience, it's ignorance, profound moral and mental ignorance masquerading as seriousness. And the self-blame parade doesn't end with young people taught only guilt about their collective past. We've fast-forwarded here at a remarkable pace. We have politicians here and in Europe determining that any hit against America or Europe must be not the fault of the bomber or the hijacker, but of something we did in the distant or dim recent past. Terrorism, they end up claiming, is caused by our reaction to terrorism. So if we stopped reacting or trying to deal with terrorism, apparently we wouldn't face it. I watched, incidentally, with awe on Thursday as John Edwards pronounced in a television interview that last week's UK-stopped terror attacks were almost certainly a reaction to British and American involvement in Iraq. It was, as ever, a shame that Mr. Edwards couldn't have stopped talking, because if he'd have laid off for even a few hours, he might have seen, though not necessarily learnt from, the news that one of the main suspects in the bomb plots converted and radicalized in 1998. That's before Iraq or 9/11. As so often, we learn more about Mr. Edwards from his comments than we do about anything else. But for my part, I'd like to point out here something that he and others will have missed. You see, 1998 is an interesting year to convert to radical Islam. A wave of British Muslims, including Omar Sheikh, the privileged LSE graduate from London who graduated to murdering the journalist Daniel Pearl, radicalized in the 90s because they felt that Western nations didn't do enough to stop the slaughter of their co-religionists in the Balkans that decade. Now, as it happens, I agree with them on this one, although I never took it out on American journalists or infidel Westerners, but that I'm not a member of the religion of peace. But I would like to suggest to you, and I wish Europeans and Americans could get this one a little better, I would like to suggest to you that if a group of people threaten to kill, murder and maim us when we do act, and threaten to kill, murder and maim us when we do not act, then that is a group of people we should not be listening to. The feelings of terrorists are evidently not a useful moral guide. But as I say, in the relativist soup, you've got to seize on what you can, even if the nearest thing is a phony grievance or a hardly disguised malevolence. Seizing on such claims is understandable for the lost, but we should consider the results of these fake benign ideas. Both the Islamists, who beat us up from the outside, and the John Edwardses, who erode us from the inside, have one consequence to their rotten or lazy thoughts, which is that they intend to render, or will end up accidentally rendering, the West incapable of action. And this overt and underlying pressure could not come at a worse time for the West or the global community. Over the last 3 years in particular, many gleeful commentators have declared that neoconservatism is over. Well, we've been here before. The same thing was declared, of course, in the Reagan years. And many of the presumptions and misunderstandings were as evident then as they are now. But let's look for a moment at what is being put forward to replace what has been, to only some extent accurately, described as the neoconservative project. The declaration that Iraq may be failing causes barely disguised glee among some opponents of the war. A number of the most prominent left-wing columnists in Britain and America have expressed open delight at the prospect of President Bush and Tony Blair being taught a lesson. Evidently, for such moral people, wishing the death of thousands of Iraqis is nothing besides giving Bush and Blair a bashing. At this stage, there is a branch of the left that is now subsumed by outright nihilism and support for violence. As Paul Berman charted in his recent brilliant book on Joschka Fischer, they have ended up coming right round the other way. And then there are those who have decided, for instance, that the election of Hamas or the tortuous negotiations over the new Iraqi government demonstrate that these foreigners aren't really keen on freedom or don't really want to have a say in the running of their own countries. You hear this one from right and left now, and it is, and the word is one which has been so overused that I hardly ever use it, but it is an idea which is without any doubt one of the most genuinely racist ideas I know. The election of Hamas is a problem we have with Hamas, not a problem we have with democracy. Likewise, the painfully slow forming of the new government and continued civil unrest in Iraq does not demonstrate, as many are now claiming, that Saddam kept a lid on things. This phrase, I believe, will go down in history alongside Mussolini and his train timetabling arrangements for sheer unimaginative wickedness. So where are we with the world? Well, the axis of evil, one of the most derided yet accurate phrases of our time, which has been laughed off by the opponents of the war on terror, appears to be outliving and outdoing many of its doubters. The missile which hit an Israeli ship on the 14th of July, killing 4 IDF personnel, was sent to Hezbollah via Damascus and guided to its target by Lebanese radar. Iran has been sending not only munitions but troops to help fight the Israelis. Short of Kim Jong-il riding in on one of these missiles himself, I can't imagine a clearer example of the axis at work. But what has come from it? Absolutely nothing. And confident of our weakness, our lack of resolve and divided selves, Tehran and Damascus appear to have noted that when they put their heads above the parapet these days, not only does nobody shoot at them, nobody even shouts. So they've raised themselves even higher, and in the last week alone, Iran has not only admitted, but boasted of its supplying of missiles to Hezbollah, and boasted of its flouting of the international community over the nuclear issue. They have made the calculation that we are weak, and our weakness has proved, as so often, a provocation. The peaceniks and those who have counselled inaction or weak action have helped to bring us into a world in the next few years in which Iran will go nuclear and in which no one apparently will do a thing to stop them. Contrast that with the situation just in March last year, when the journalist Joe Klein met with Assad in Syria. Please send this message: I am not Saddam Hussein, I want to cooperate, the Syrian president begged. When someone asks when a golden moment was, I'd say that was it. A period in which tyrants and despots felt genuinely concerned that they would be next, and that the day of the great dictators were over. And where are we now? The tyrants have become emboldened, and 5 years on from September the 11th, we are, I believe, as a result, heading into a period as dangerous and avoidable as any in our history. We're heading there because we are losing faith in ourselves. Europe has been having a crisis of self-confidence for some time now, though I have some hope that Europe is coming out of this headless reverie. But exactly the least useful situation now would be if America joined in the crisis of confidence. The neoconservative resolution, whether the N-word is used or not, is vital not for reasons of pride, but for reasons of right. Through neoconservative thought and action, I believe that the West can deal with the problems of our time, and deal with them early, as truly liberal men, rather than down the road as barbarians. But if Americans are swayed by the goons and propagandists who claim that spreading freedom is colonialism, or that liberation is occupation, or that up is down and left is right, if Americans are swayed by these people, then it will not only be America that will suffer. It will be the cause of liberty and the possibility of freedom across the globe. Our thoughts will indeed have had great consequences, and future generations will not forgive us for them. At the conclusion of The Closing of the American Mind, Alan Bloom famously wrote, "This is the American moment in world history, and one for which we shall forever be judged. The fate of freedom in the world has devolved upon our regime. The gravity of our given task is great, and it is very much in doubt how the future will judge our stewardship." Today, we are a little closer to hearing that judgment, a little closer to success, or a little nearer to failure. This is indeed the moment for which America will be judged. The predictable dolts will be embittered by and critical of your success, but far more people will rue your failure. In Britain and Europe, as I say, I see some signs of revival, of people finally speaking out again on issues on which they remained silent for too many years, of the throwing off and challenging of presumptions and platitudes which held sway for too long. For many of us, it is America which has inspired us and led the way. Neoconservatism is the first complete political philosophy founded in America to transfer slowly but measurably to Europe. Movements like the Henry Jackson Society in London and the Euston Group explicitly link to and look to the bold and inspiring philosophy which revived American conservatism in the last half-century. We look to your example, and we like what we see. I hope that you can find it in yourselves to continue the path you have been on. Now is not the time for you to go wobbly on us. Thank you.